Dad, they sleep on the street every night. The young billionaire decides to invite the poor twins into his home, and something incredible happens. The lasagna was perfect. Nolan cut another piece for June, who chewed slowly, swinging her legs in the high chair of the Italian restaurant. It was one of those simple nights he cherished the most, just the two of them. No rush, talking about her day at school. Daddy, Sarah said she's getting a little brother. June wiped her mouth with a napkin. Do you think it would be nice to have someone to play with at home? Nolan smiled. At 6 years old, June always asked questions that caught him off guard. So maybe one day, sweetie. For now, it's just us. But our house is really big, right? There's that room we never use. He nodded, thinking of the empty house waiting for them. 3 bedrooms, a large yard, so much silence. Since Sarah had passed away 2 years ago, the house felt like an echo of itself. Can I have ice cream? June changed the subject with the ease typical of children. Of course. While they waited for dessert, Nolan watched his daughter, brown hair tied in 2 pigtails, curious eyes, always moving. June was his light, the reason he woke up every day and tried to be a better person. The ice cream arrived in a colorful bowl. June attacked the first spoonful and made a face of pure happiness. Is it good? It's great. Do you want to try some? Nolan accepted a spoonful. Strawberry with chocolate chunks. Too sweet for him. Perfect for her. Half an hour later, they were on the sidewalk in front of the restaurant. The night was cold for October, and Nolan adjusted June's jacket. Ready for the car? Wait! June stopped suddenly, looking at something ahead. Daddy, look! Nolan followed his daughter's gaze. Across the street, near a closed shop, 2 small figures were huddled on the ground. They looked like children. They crossed the street slowly. As they got closer, Nolan could see more clearly. 2 girls, clearly twins, sleeping embraced under a thin, tattered blanket. They couldn't be more than 5 years old. Are they cold? June's voice came out in a worried whisper. Nolan felt his heart clench. The girls wore clothes that were once colorful, now faded and dirty. Their faces, even in sleep, carried a tense expression, as if they were always on alert. Do you think they don't have a mommy? June moved closer, and Nolan gently held her by the shoulder. I don't know, honey. Do you think their daddy left? June watched the 2 girls for a long moment, her eyes filling with tears. Then she turned to her father, pointing at the twins with an expression of shock and urgency. Daddy, do they sleep on the street every night? The question echoed in the cold night air. Nolan looked at the 2 helpless children, then at his own daughter, who was watching the scene with a mixture of horror and compassion that deeply touched him. June turned to him again, her eyes shining under the yellow light of the lamppost. Our house is big. They could sleep with us. His daughter's words hung between them. Nolan looked again at the girls sleeping on the cold sidewalk. His paternal instinct conflicted with his caution. He knew nothing about them, their situation, or the risks involved. But looking at June, he saw in her a pure kindness that made him make a decision. Stay here behind me, he said softly. Nolan knelt beside the girls and gently touched one of their shoulders. She woke instantly, her eyes opening with the startle of someone always on alert. The other woke up in the same second, as if connected by an invisible thread. Hey, it's okay, Nolan said in the gentlest voice he could manage. Everything's all right. The 2 sat up quickly, hugging each other tightly. They were identical. Tangled blonde hair, frightened blue eyes, cheeks smudged with dirt. We didn't steal anything, one of them said, her voice trembling. As we were just sleeping. I know, Nolan replied, keeping his distance so as not to scare them further. What are your names? The girls looked at each other. The one who had spoken first answered, I'm Lena. This is Lila. Lila just nodded, hiding behind her sister. June, who had been quiet until then, approached slowly and knelt at the same height as the twins. Hi, she said with a shy smile. I'm June. We just want to help. Something in June's sincere voice seemed to reassure the girls. Lena's shoulders relaxed slightly, though she still kept Lila protectively behind her. Are you hungry? Nolan asked. Lena nodded slowly. Lila whispered something in her sister's ear. who translated, "She wants to know if you're the police." "No," Nolan smiled. "I'm just a dad, and this is my daughter. We were coming back from dinner and, well, we can't leave you out here in the cold." "We always sleep here," Lena said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Nolan's heart broke a little more. He looked at June, who was watching the twins with a determined expression he knew well, the same one she made when she decided she wanted something very specific for breakfast. "How about you come with me?" he offered. "I have a warm house and with food and clean beds. You can take a hot bath and sleep safely." The girls hesitated. Lena whispered something to Lila, who shook her head no. A silent conversation took place between them. Glances, expressions, small gestures that only twins understood. "What if you're mean?" Lena asked directly. The question caught Nolan off guard with its brutal honesty. June answered before he could, "My daddy isn't mean. He makes pancakes on Sundays and lets me pick the movie on Netflix." Lila let out a muffled giggle, and Nolan saw a small crack in the girl's armor of distrust. "Look," he said, taking his wallet from his pocket and showing his ID. "My name is Nolan Wakefield. I work at a law firm. I live 10 minutes from here. If you want it, you can come with me tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure things out. No strings attached." "What does no strings attached mean?" Lena asked. "It means if you don't like it, or if you change your minds, you can leave any time." Another silent conversation between the twins. This time it was Lila who nodded first. Lena looked at Nolan, then at June, then at the thin blanket that barely protected them from the cold wind. "Okay," she said finally. "But if you do anything bad, we know how to scream really loud." Nolan couldn't help but smile. "Fair enough." The car was parked 2 blocks away. During the walk, the girls stayed close to each other but relaxed slightly as June started telling them about her school, her teacher, and the neighbor's cat that always escaped into their yard. In the car, Lena and Lila sat together in the back seat, sharing the seatbelt. June turned to them. "Do you like to draw?" "I have some really cool colored pencils at home." "We do," Lila said for the first time, her voice barely a whisper. "What do you like to draw?" "Houses," said Lena. "We always draw houses." Nolan watched through the rearview mirror. The 2 girls were looking out the window, watching the city lights go by. He wondered when was the last time they had been inside a car, inside a real house. His house was in a quiet neighborhood, with large trees and well-kept gardens. When he parked in the driveway, the girls looked impressed at the 2-story facade. "It really is big," Lena murmured. "You can see the guest room," June said excitedly. "It has a really big bed and a window that looks out to the garden." Inside the house, the twins stood frozen in the entryway, looking around with wide eyes. The living room, with its comfortable sofas and fireplace, must have looked like a palace to them. "You can take off your shoes if you want," Nolan offered. The 2 looked at each other and slowly took off their worn-out sneakers. Nolan noticed that one of them had a hole in her sock. "Are you hungry?" They nodded. In the kitchen, Nolan made grilled cheese sandwiches, while June showed the girls where the cups and napkins were. Lena and Lila ate slowly, chewing each bite as if it were the most delicious thing in the world. "Yes, can I have some water?" Lila asked quietly. "Of course. You can have as much as you want." They each drank 2 glasses. After the food, June led the twins upstairs to the guest room. It was a simple but cozy room, with a double bed, an old dresser, and light blue curtains. "The bed is for you," June said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "My room is right next door. If you need anything, just call me." Lena and Lila looked at the bed as if they had never seen one before. Slowly, they climbed onto it and lay down in the center, huddled together as they had been on the sidewalk, on top of the covers. "Don't you want to change into pajamas?" June asked. "We don't have pajamas," Lena said. "That's okay. We'll figure that out tomorrow." June pulled the covers over the 2 girls, who snuggled against each other. She kissed each of them on the forehead, a gesture so natural it made Nolan's heart ache. "Good night," June said softly. "See you tomorrow." "Good night," the twins whispered in unison. Nolan appeared at the door as June was leaving the room. He watched the two girls in the bed, Lena with her protective arm over Lila with her face hidden in her sister's shoulder. Even in the comfort of the warm bed, they maintained their defensive posture, ready to flee at any moment. He turned off the light slowly, leaving only the hallway light on, and closed the door halfway. In the hallway, June was waiting for him with a serious expression. "They're going to stay, right, Daddy?" Nolan knelt to his daughter's level. "I don't know, honey. Tomorrow we'll have to find out if they have family looking for them, if there's someone responsible for them. But they were all alone on the street." "I know. And we'll take care of it, okay?" June hugged him. "I like them." "Me too." After June brushed her teeth and went to bed, Nolan returned to the guest room door. He peeked through the crack and saw that the girls were still awake, whispering to each other. He went down to the living room, got a beer from the fridge, and sat on the sofa. The house, which just hours before had been silent and empty, now had a different energy. He could feel the presence of the two children upstairs, a presence that brought with it questions, responsibilities, and possibilities he hadn't considered before. For the first time in years, there was something new in the air: presence, warmth, and a beginning. Nolan looked at the ceiling, thinking about the two girls now sleeping in his house. Tomorrow he would have to make difficult decisions. He would have to make calls, find out their legal situation, understand how the child protective system worked. But tonight, for now, two children were safe and warm, and that, for now, was enough. He finished his beer and went up to his room. As he passed the guest room door, he heard the soft sound of peaceful breathing. Finally, the girls had fallen asleep. Nolan went to bed, but it took him a long time to fall asleep. His mind was filled with thoughts about what tomorrow would bring, about the responsibilities he might have taken on, about the way June had reacted to the girls with such naturalness and kindness. When he finally fell asleep, it was with the feeling that his life had changed completely in a single night. And strangely, that didn't scare him as much as it should have. 3 days had passed since Lena and Lila arrived at the Wakefield house. 3 days of small progress and cautious discoveries. The twins still slept huddled together in the same bed, but they now relaxed a little more in the presence of Nolan and June. On Thursday afternoon, after lunch, the four of them were in the living room. June was playing on the rug with her dolls, while Lena and Lila watched shyly, still learning what it was like to be in a real house. "Want to play with me?" June asked, offering a doll to each twin. Lena took the doll slowly, as if it was something precious. Lila did the same, gently stroking the doll's hair. "We've never had dolls," Lila said quietly. "Tas never." June seemed surprised. The twins shook their heads. Nolan, who was reading on the sofa, lowered his newspaper and paid attention to the conversation. "Dad said it was silly," Lena explained. "That dolls were useless." "He would get mad when we asked," Lila added. June was quiet for a moment, processing the information. Then she stood up and ran to her room, returning with more toys. "Now you have them," she said excitedly, dumping a box of toys onto the rug. Lena and Lila looked at each other, a mixture of joy and uncertainty in their eyes. "Really?" asked Lila. "Of course. Toys are for playing," June replied. Nolan watched the girls approach the toys with reverence. It was painful to see how simple things seemed like miracles to them. "Nolan?" Lena called to him. "Yes. Can we tell you something?" He closed the newspaper completely and sat on the floor with them. "Of course. You can tell me anything." The twins looked at each other again, having that silent conversation only they understood. Lena nodded to Lila, who took a deep breath. "Our dad was always angry," said Lila, the words tumbling out at once. June stopped playing and looked at the sisters attentively. Nolan felt something tighten in his chest. "Ever since we were little, he yelled at us," Lena continued. "For anything. If we made noise, if we dropped something, if we cried too much," Lila explained, counting on her fingers. "He always drank too," said Lena. "Every day. Mom was sad because of it. She would talk to him quietly to stop, but he would just get angrier," Lila recounted. Nolan listened in silence, his heart breaking with every word. June had moved closer to the twins, listening with wide eyes. "He had no patience," Lena continued. If we didn't understand something the first time, he would scream. Once I broke a plate by accident, said Lila, her voice getting smaller. He yelled so much I went deaf in one ear for a while. Mum always got in the middle to protect us, said Lena. So then he would get mad at her too. But our mum was nice. Lila smiled sadly. She sang us to sleep and made drawings when Dad wasn't around. She taught us how to write our names, Lena added. Nolan saw how they lit up when talking about their mother, in contrast to the tension that appeared when they mentioned their father. Then our mum got sick and died, Lila said, her tone serious again. After that, Dad got even worse, Lena continued. He drank more, yelled more. There was often no food, said Lila. He spent the money on drinks. We were so hungry, Lena whispered. Sometimes we only ate stale bread for days. And when we complained about being hungry, he would get furious, Lila added. June had tears in her eyes, clutching her doll to her chest. Were you scared of him? She asked softly. Very scared, they both answered together. We would hide in the closet when we heard him coming, said Lena. You could tell when he was drunk by the way he opened the door, Lila explained. He made a lot of noise. One day he drank more than usual, Lena continued. He broke the living room mirror, threw the plates on the floor. We stayed hidden until he stopped shouting, said Lila. When we came out, he was gone, Lena recounted. The first day we thought he would come back, said Lila. The second day too, Lena added. But then the food in the house ran out, said Lila. And the landlord came asking for money, Lena continued. We explained that Dad had left, but he didn't care, said Lila. He said kids couldn't live alone and that we had to leave, Lena added. And we took our mom's blanket and left, they said together. Silence filled the room. June had tears streaming down her face and moved closer to the twins. How long were you on the street? Nolan asked gently. The girls looked at each other, trying to calculate. A long time, said Lila. More than a full moon. We slept in different places, Lena explained. Whenever someone told us to leave. Some days we didn't eat anything, said Lila. Or we only ate what we found in the trash, Lena added, without shame. June let out a sob and hugged both twins at the same time. I'll never let anyone hurt you again, she said with a seriousness only a child can possess. Lena and Lila melted into the hug. It was the first time Nolan had seen them truly relax since they arrived. You're safe now, Nolan said, his voice hoarser than usual. You'll never be hungry or cold again, and no one will ever yell at you again, June added, still hugging them. Promise? Asked Lila, looking at Nolan over June's shoulder. I promise, Nolan said. In this house, nobody yells. And there's always food. And toys, June added, making the twins smile for the first time during the whole conversation. The three girls settled on the rug, huddled together. Nolan watched them, June enveloping the twins with her sincere, childlike affection, and Lena and Lila finally allowing themselves to be cared for. After a few minutes, the girls went back to playing. There was something different in the air now, an honesty, a trust that hadn't existed before. They had told their story, and the world hadn't collapsed. June, Lena said after a while. Yeah? Does your daddy ever yell at you? Never, June answered simply. He gets sad sometimes, or worried, but he never yells. What's it like to have a dad who doesn't yell? Asked Lila. It's nice, June said, thinking. We talk, we play together, he reads me stories. The twins processed this information as if it were a completely new concept. Do you want me to read you a story? Nolan asked. They both nodded shyly. He took a book from the shelf and sat on the sofa. The three girls settled beside him. Nolan read about a rabbit who found a new home in the forest. During the story, he felt Lila relax against his arm, and Lena moved closer. June, as always, asked questions and made comments that made the twins laugh. When he finished the story, the girls were sleepy and calm. Did you like it? He asked. It was beautiful, said Lila. The rabbit found a new family, Lena observed. Like you, June said simply. Nolan watched them, three girls snuggled on the sofa, finally at peace. There was no need for complicated words or grand promises, just presence, care, and time. How about we make dinner together, he suggested. Can I help? Asked Lena. Me too, said Lila. Of course, let's make pizza. In the kitchen, the three girls worked together, spreading sauce and cheese on the dough. There was laughter, flour on the floor, and a delightful mess that made Nolan smile. During dinner, they talked about simple things: June's school, the drawings the twins liked to make, plans for the weekend. Tomorrow is Saturday, said June. We can make pancakes and play in the yard. Can I help with the pancakes? Asked Lena. Of course. And can I help too? Said Lila. Everyone can help, Nolan replied. At bedtime, he found them in the guest room. June had insisted on having another slumber party. Good night, girls, he said from the door. Good night, Daddy, June replied. Good night, Nolan, the twins whispered. He turned off the light, leaving only the hallway light on. Going downstairs, Nolan poured himself a cup of tea and sat on the sofa. The house was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence than before. It was a full silence, full of soft breaths, peaceful dreams, and safety. Upstairs, he could hear the girls whispering softly, their voices finally sounding light and carefree. Nolan smiled, sipping his tea. He didn't know exactly what the future would bring, but he knew that for now, 3 children were safe, fed and loved. And that, for now, was more than enough. A week had passed since the twins told their story, and with each passing day, the Wakefield house transformed in ways Nolan had never imagined. On Friday morning, he woke up to a sound he hadn't heard in years, laughter echoing through the hallways. He went downstairs and found the 3 girls playing hide-and-seek, with June counting to 10, while Lena and Lila ran to find the best hiding spot. 8 and 9 at 10, ready or not, here I come, shouted June, and she ran off after the twins. The sound of little feet pattering on the wooden floor, the muffled giggles coming from the living room closet, the shouts of, I found you. All of it created a symphony that warmed Nolan's heart. Good morning, everyone, he said, appearing in the living room. Daddy. Lila hid in the funniest place, June said, pointing to the curtains that were moving suspiciously. I'm not here, came a muffled voice from behind the curtains, making everyone laugh. Of course you're not, Nolan said with mock seriousness. It must be the wind. I'm not the wind, I'm a person. Lila emerged from behind the curtains, laughing. Aha, so you are here. June ran to hug her. Now it's your turn to count. While the girls restarted their game, Nolan prepared breakfast. The kitchen, once so quiet, was now filled with lively conversations and laughter coming from the living room. After breakfast, the 3 girls went out into the backyard. Nolan watched them from the kitchen window as he washed the dishes. June was showing the twins how to make soap bubbles, and soon the yard was filled with colorful bubbles shimmering in the morning sun. Look how big mine got, shouted Lena, blowing a huge bubble. Mine are small, but there are a lot of them, Lila replied, creating several small bubbles at once. Let's see who can pop the most, June suggested. And off they went, running through the yard, trying to pop the bubbles before they flew too high. The lawn, once perfect and untouched, now had little footprints all over it, and Nolan couldn't have been happier with the mess. In the afternoon, after lunch, the girls decided to put on a play in the living room. June brought her dolls and stuffed animals, and soon they were creating different voices for each character. I'm Princess Bella, declared June, holding a blonde doll. I'm Princess Rose, said Lena, picking up a doll with brown hair. And I'm Princess Lila, said Lila, laughing at her own name. Now we need a prince, said June, looking at the stuffed animals. For the bear can be the prince, Lena suggested. But a bear isn't a prince, Lila observed. Yes, he can be. He's a magic bear that turns into a prince, June explained with childlike logic. Nolan stopped working on his computer to watch the improvised play. The 3 girls created funny dialogues, made the dolls dance, and invented wild adventures. The sound of their high-pitched voices imitating princesses and the bear prince echoed throughout the house. And now all the princesses will live in the same castle, June announced at the end of the story. Forever, asked Lila. Forever and ever, June confirmed. During the performance, Nolan noticed how the twins had changed. Lena, who used to speak only when necessary, was now inventing elaborate dialogues for her doll. Leela, who used to hide behind her sister, was now making funny voices and laughing out loud at her own jokes. In the late afternoon, while the girls were drawing at the living room table, they started creating nicknames for each other. "June, you can be Ju," said Lena. "And you can be Lenny," June replied. "And Lila can be Lily," suggested Lena. "Lily, I like it." Lila clapped her hands. "And you two can be the Magic Twins," declared June. "Why magic?" asked Lila. "Because you appeared out of nowhere and made our house more fun," June explained with sincerity. Nolan watched the scene from the kitchen, where he was preparing an afternoon snack. The table he once used only for work was now covered in paper, colored pencils, and glitter. It was a beautiful mess. "Nolan," Lena called him. "Do you have a nickname?" "I don't know. Do you want to give me one?" The three girls looked at each other, whispering and laughing. "Daddy Nolan," they declared together. "But I'm not Lena and Lila's dad," he said, curious to see their reaction. "It doesn't matter," said June. "You take care of us like a daddy." "Is he like my real dad?" asked Lila. "No," Lena replied quickly. "He's better, he's kind." "And he doesn't yell," Lila added. "And he makes pancakes," June chimed in. Nolan felt his chest tighten with emotion. "Okay then, Daddy Nolan it is." In the evening, after dinner, the girls were singing in the living room. June had taught the twins a song from school, and now the three of them were singing together, inventing simple choreographies. "If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands," they sang, clapping in rhythm. "If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet." And they hopped on one foot. The music echoed throughout the house, rising up the stairs, filling every corner that was once silent. Nolan stopped reading to listen. It was amazing how the house had come alive. Before the twins arrived, the evenings were quiet. He and June would have dinner, watch a movie, and she would go to bed early. The house would then fall silent, with only the sound of the TV or his typing on the computer. Now, even in the quietest hours, there was always a whisper, a muffled giggle, the sound of feet running down the hall to the bathroom, or just the soft breathing of three children sleeping upstairs. The once silent mansion had gained the sounds of childhood. "Daddy Nolan, come sing with us," June called him. "I don't know the song," he replied. "We'll teach you," said Lena. "It's easy," Lila added. He got up and joined the girls in the living room. They taught him the song. He laughed at his own attempts to dance and discovered that singing off-key with three children was one of the best parts of his day. The next day, Saturday, he found Lena drawing alone at the kitchen table while the other two were still asleep. "Good morning, Lenny," he said, using the nickname. "Good morning, Daddy Nolan," she replied, smiling. "What are you drawing?" "Our family," she said, showing him the paper. Nolan moved closer to see better. The drawing showed four figures holding hands in front of a large house: a tall man, a girl with brown hair, and two identical blonde girls. Underneath, in still uncertain handwriting, was written, "Family." "Family?" he asked, smiling at the misspelled word. "It's family, but I forgot how to write the I," Lena explained. "It doesn't matter," Nolan said, feeling a deep emotion. "It's perfect just the way it is." "Can I give it to you?" "Of course. I'll keep it forever." Lena carefully tore the paper from the pad and handed it to him. Nolan held the drawing as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. "Thank you, Lenny. It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever received," she smiled, proud. "And now you have a picture of us to keep." Nolan went up to his office and put the drawing in a simple frame he had in his drawer. Then he placed the frame on the shelf, right in the center, where he could see it every day. The drawing with the word family became a precious symbol, not just of the children's love, but of the new reality that was forming in the house. When he came down, he found the three girls having breakfast and planning what to do on Saturday. "We can have a picnic in the yard," June suggested. "And play tag," said Lila. "And sing more songs," Lena added. "Sounds like a perfect plan," said Nolan, and it was. As the day went on, the house filled with even more life. Laughter in the yard during the picnic, shouts of joy during the game of tag, made-up songs that made little sense but were sung with total enthusiasm. In the afternoon, during a break from playing, the three girls were lying on the grass, looking at the clouds. "That one looks like a rabbit," said June, pointing to the sky. "And that one looks like our house," said Lila. "Our house is the best house in the world," declared Lena. "Why?" asked June. "Because it has you, it has Daddy Nolan, and it has us," Lena replied simply. Nolan, who was watering the nearby plants, stopped to listen. "And because it's noisy," added Lila, laughing. "Noisy?" June seemed confused. "Before, we lived in a very quiet and sad place," Lena explained. "Here, there's laughter all the time." "And music," said Lila. "And conversation," Lena added. "A good house is supposed to be noisy," June agreed with a child's wisdom. Nolan smiled, watering the flowers. They were right. A good house makes noise. The noise of life, of joy, of family. As the sun set, he watched the three girls running through the yard in another round of tag, their voices echoing throughout the property. The big house, which for so long had been just him and June, now pulsed with the energy of three happy children. It was noisy, messy, full of muddy footprints and drawings on the fridge, and it was absolutely perfect. 2 weeks had passed since the twins arrived, and with each day, Nolan felt more clearly that this situation could not remain undefined. As much as his house had transformed into a true home for Lena and Lila, he knew he needed to legalize the situation. On Monday morning, after taking June to school, Nolan sat in his office and called the city's social services. The conversation was long and full of procedures he didn't know, but in the end, he managed to schedule a home visit for Thursday afternoon. Throughout the week, he thought about how to tell the girls. He didn't want to scare them, but he also couldn't leave them completely unprepared. He decided it would be best to explain the day before. On Wednesday evening after dinner, he gathered the three girls in the living room. "Girls, I need to talk to you about something important," he began, sitting on the sofa. The twins immediately tensed up, that alert expression returning to their faces. June instinctively moved closer to them. "Tomorrow, a lady is coming to our house to talk with us," Nolan continued calmly. "She's called a social worker, and her job is to make sure that children are safe and happy." "Is she going to take us away?" asked Lena, her voice small and scared. "No," Nolan replied firmly. "She just wants to make sure you are being well taken care of." "But what if she doesn't like us?" Lila murmured. "Impossible," said June with conviction. "You're the best." "We promise to behave," Lena said quickly. "We won't make a mess, we won't shout, we won't run through the house." "Hey, calm down." Nolan got up and sat on the floor at their level. "You don't need to change anything. She needs to see who you really are, happy, safe and at home." "But can we stay with you?" asked Lila. "You are safe here. No one is going to take you away," Nolan said, looking into each of their eyes. "This is your home now." The twins looked at each other, having that silent conversation they always had when they were nervous. Finally, Lena nodded. "Okay, we trust you, Daddy Nolan." The next day, Nolan was dressed nicely and the house was impeccable. Not that he had cleaned much more than usual, but he wanted everything to seem perfect. The girls were in the backyard when the social worker's car pulled up in front of the house. "She's here," Nolan murmured to himself, taking a deep breath. When he opened the door, he found a woman in her 40s with short hair and a professional smile. She carried a folder and wore formal clothes, but there was something kind in her eyes. "Mr. Wakefield, I'm Margaret Davis, from Social Services. Thank you for contacting us." "Please come in," Nolan said, shaking her hand. "The girls are in the backyard." Margaret entered and looked around the room, making discreet mental notes. The house was visibly being used by children. There were toys organized in baskets, drawings on the fridge, and booster seats at the kitchen table. "Before I meet the girls, I'd like to talk a little about the situation," she said, sitting on the sofa. Nolan told her everything. How he found the twins on the street, the story they told about their parents, how they had adapted to the house. Margaret listened attentively, making occasional notes. "Their father? It's complicated," Nolan added carefully. "From what the girls have said, there's a history of alcoholism, neglect and abandonment. If he shows up again, it could be problematic." "I understand," said Margaret, making more notes. "We'll document all of this in the file. It's important to have this history recorded." "And are they attending school?" she asked. "Not yet. I wanted to regularize their situation first and also give them time to adapt, but I'm arranging for their enrollment. I see. And medical care. I took them both for a general checkup last week. They're healthy, just a little underweight, but they've already improved a lot. Margaret nodded, seeming to approve. May I meet the girls now? Nolan went to the back door and called, Girls, can you come to the living room? June came running in, as always, but stopped when she saw the stranger. Lena and Lila appeared behind her, clearly nervous. This is Margaret, the social worker I told you about yesterday, Nolan said softly. Hello, girls, said Margaret with a warm smile. It's a pleasure to meet you. June waved shyly. The twins, however, looked at each other and suddenly ran behind the sofa, hiding. Is she going to take us away? Lena's muffled voice came from behind the furniture. We promise to be good, Lila added. Nolan's heart ached. He stood up and went around the sofa, kneeling on the floor at the level of the hidden girls. You are safe here, he said in a firm and loving voice. No one is going to take you away. Margaret watched the scene attentively, seeing how Nolan handled the children's fear. Girls, she said softly, you can stay behind the sofa while we talk. I just want to know if you're happy here. We are, came Lila's quick reply. Very happy, Lena added. That's good, said Margaret. So can you tell me what you like to do here? Slowly, the twins began to relax. First, only their heads appeared over the sofa. Then they sat on the floor behind it. And finally, they moved a little closer. We play in the yard, said Lena. And we put on plays with dolls, Lila added. And we sing, said June, joining the conversation. So they know how to sing very beautiful songs. Really? That's nice, Margaret smiled. And do you eat well? Very well, Lila replied. Daddy Nolan makes pancakes and pizza. Margaret looked at Nolan with a questioning expression upon hearing Daddy Nolan. That's what they call me, he explained. It started as a joke, but he takes care of us like a real daddy, Lena interrupted, coming out completely from behind the sofa. Except without yelling, Lila added, also approaching. Ah, said Margaret, understanding more about the girls' past. And what's it like living here with June? The three girls looked at each other and smiled. It's really good, said Lena. June teaches us how to play new things, Lila explained. And they teach me how to make pretty drawings, said June. Margaret spent the next hour talking with the girls, observing how they interacted, how safe and comfortable they felt. She saw June showing her toys to the twins, saw how Lena and Lila protectively positioned themselves relative to each other, but also how they included June in everything. Can I see the room where you sleep? Margaret asked. The girls led her upstairs, proudly showing her the guest room that was now theirs. There were 2 small beds. Nolan had bought a second one the week before, but Margaret noticed that the covers from both were messed up on just one bed. Do you still sleep together? She asked gently. We've always slept together, Lena explained. It's warmer. And safer, Lila added. Margaret nodded understandingly. It was common for children who had experienced trauma to maintain behaviors of mutual protection. In June's room, the girls showed her the drawings they made together, the books June read to them, and the plans they had made to decorate the twins' room. We're going to put glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, June said excitedly. And pink curtains, Lila added. And a shelf for our drawings, Lena completed. Back downstairs, Margaret had a more private conversation with Nolan while the girls played in the yard. They have clearly adapted very well, she said. I can see they are being well cared for, fed, and loved. They've changed our lives completely, Nolan said. For the better, and your plans for the future. I want to adopt them, he answered without hesitation. Officially, I want them to be my daughters legally. Margaret smiled. I will start the process. Based on what I've seen today, and considering the clear abandonment by the biological father, I believe there won't be any problems. But it will take some time. How much time? A few months. We need to try to locate the biological father, document the abandonment, go through psychological evaluations. It's a long but necessary process. Nolan nodded. Do whatever it takes. As Margaret prepared to leave, the 3 girls came to say goodbye. Are you going to stay here? She asked the twins. There we are, they answered together. "And are you happy?" "Very." "Then everything is perfect," said Margaret, shaking each of their hands. After she left, the girls ran to hug Nolan. "We get to stay?" asked Lila. "Forever," he replied. That night, at bath time, Nolan observed a scene that made him smile. The three girls were in the bathroom, brushing their teeth together in front of the large mirror. June in the middle, Lena on one side, Lila on the other, all with toothpaste foam coming out of their mouths as they tried to talk. "It's so nice to have friends at home," said June, spitting the foam into the sink. "We like having you too," Lena replied. "It's like we're real sisters," Lila added. June stopped brushing her teeth and looked at the twins in the mirror. "They could be my sisters, right, Daddy?" she asked, turning to Nolan, who was at the door. "We could be a family," she added, her voice full of hope. Nolan stood still for a moment, watching the three girls who were looking at him, waiting for an answer. June with her eyes full of expectation, Lena and Lila with a mixture of hope and fear. He didn't answer immediately, but he smiled. A smile that came from the bottom of his heart, because deep down, that's exactly what he felt. "You already are a family," he said finally. "We just need to make it official." The three girls screamed with joy and ran to hug him, still with toothpaste in their mouths. It was a messy, wet, and perfect hug. Later, when the girls were asleep, Nolan sat in his office and looked at Lena's drawing in the frame. Family misspelled, but with more love than any correctly written word. Margaret had said the process would take months. It would be a long journey of paperwork, evaluations and legal procedures. But looking at that drawing, Nolan knew it would be worth every day of waiting. Because some families are born, others find each other. And sometimes, the best ones are those that choose to exist, one child at a time, one day at a time, one hug at a time. Upstairs, he could hear the soft whispers of the three girls talking before falling asleep. The most beautiful sound in the world, the sound of a family forming naturally with love and time. And for the first time since it all began, Nolan felt a complete sense of peace. It didn't matter how long the process took. They were already his daughters, and he was already their father. The rest was just paperwork. 3 weeks had passed since the social worker's visit. The house's routine had settled into a natural and comfortable rhythm, as if the twins had always been a part of it. Every morning, Nolan woke up to the sound of little footsteps in the hallway. When he went down to the kitchen this Tuesday, he found Lena and Lila sitting at the table, waiting. They didn't ask for breakfast, didn't complain of hunger. They simply waited, as if they knew they would be cared for. "Good morning, girls," Nolan said, kissing the tops of their blonde heads. "Good morning, Nolan," they replied together. They still didn't call him Dad, not even Daddy Nolan, as they had in the first few weeks. There was an invisible barrier there, a word they couldn't bring themselves to say. And Nolan understood. Sometimes words carry too much weight. As he made pancakes, he watched the twins out of the corner of his eye. Lena was drawing on a piece of paper, while Lila watched his every move in the kitchen with genuine interest. "Can I help?" Lila asked shyly. "Of course, you can stir the batter." She approached and held the wooden spoon. Her small hands could barely turn the heavy mixture, so Nolan placed his hands over hers, helping with the motion. "Like this?" asked Lila. "Perfect." During breakfast, June talked about the plans for Saturday. The twins listened attentively, naturally including themselves in the house's activities. After breakfast, Nolan went to his office to check some emails. Not 5 minutes had passed when he felt a presence at the door. Lena was there, just watching. "Do you need something, sweetie?" "No," she replied softly. "I just wanted to see where you stay. You can come in." She entered slowly, her eyes stopping on the framed drawing with family written underneath. "You really kept it," she said, smiling. "Of course I did. It's very special." Lena pulled up a small chair and sat beside him. She didn't ask what he was doing, didn't ask to touch anything. She just wanted to be close. It was a silent and comforting companionship. After an hour, she got up to play but came back a few seconds later. "Nolan." "Yes. Thank you for letting me stay here." "Always, sweetie. Always." In the afternoon, while the girls were playing in the backyard, Nolan received a work call. It was urgent. He would need to work for a few hours on Sunday. When he explained it during dinner, he saw June's expression change. "But Sunday is family day," she said, pouting. Lena and Lila exchanged glances. They said nothing, but Nolan noticed a subtle tension. On Sunday morning, he got up early to work. When he went down for breakfast, he found the three girls already awake, drinking milk and eating toast that June had prepared. 2 hours later, he was focused on his screen when he heard footsteps on the stairs. Lena appeared at the door with a glass of water. "I brought you some water," she said quietly. "Thank you, sweetie." "You didn't have to. I wanted to." She placed the glass on the desk and stood there. "Do you need something?" Nolan asked. "No, just wanted to make sure you were here." Nolan stopped typing and looked at her. There was something in Lena's eyes, an old worry, a fear he recognized. "I'm here," he said softly. "I'm just working. You're not going to leave?" The question was asked so quietly he almost didn't hear it. But he did, and he understood. "Never," he said, turning his chair to face her. "I will never leave you." Lena nodded and pulled up the small chair. She sat beside him, and her presence seemed to relax him immediately. An hour later, Lila appeared too, followed by June. Soon the office was occupied by the three girls. They simply wanted to be in the same space as him. They didn't need constant attention, just proximity. Around 4 in the afternoon, he finally finished his work. "Done," he announced. "Now I can play for the rest of the day." The three girls smiled. They settled on the living room sofa to watch a movie, Nolan in the middle, June on one side, the twins on the other. During the movie, he felt Lena rest her head on his shoulder. A few minutes later, Lila did the same on the other side. These were not planned or forced gestures. It was instinct, the natural need to get closer to someone who offers safety and affection. At night, at bedtime, the girls went upstairs to brush their teeth. Nolan was tidying up the living room when he heard footsteps coming down the stairs. It was Lila, in her pajamas, holding her favorite doll. Without a word, she hugged him around the waist, squeezing tightly. "Good night," she murmured against his shirt. "Good night, sweetie." She ran back up to her room. 2 minutes later, Lena came down too. She did the exact same thing, a silent hug, a whispered, "Good night," and ran back upstairs. Nolan stood in the living room, touched by the simplicity of the gesture. They didn't need to say he was important to them. Their hearts spoke through small gestures and shared moments. Throughout the week, the pattern repeated. Every afternoon when he got home from work, 2 small figures would run to the door. They didn't shout, "Daddy's home," like June did, but they ran with open arms, wanting hugs and wanting to tell him about their day. When there was thunder at night, he would hear little footsteps in the hall. The twins would appear at his bedroom door, hugging each other, but clearly wanting security. "Can I sleep here?" one of them would ask, always politely, and he would open the covers, letting them snuggle in on either side. They didn't need to explain their fear. He just offered the comfort they sought. During dinners, they always saved the seat next to them for him. During TV time, they would squeeze onto the sofa to be close. When he was in the garden, they would appear to help, even when help wasn't needed. One morning, while he was making coffee, Lila approached and simply rested her head on his arm. She said nothing, just stood there for a few seconds before returning to the table. On another afternoon, when Nolan was reading on the sofa, Lena sat beside him and pulled a small part of the blanket he was using, covering herself too. They read in silence, each with their own book, sharing the same space. On a rainy afternoon, when the three girls were playing in the living room, Nolan noticed they always left a space in the circle where they were sitting. When he approached, June patted the floor next to her. "You can sit here," she said naturally, and he sat down, joining the game as if he had always been a part of it. The bond grew day by day, silent but solid. It was a care that didn't need a name, a love that didn't need words. They still didn't call him Dad, but every night they waited for him to come home. Every morning they sought his presence. When they were scared, they ran into his arms. When they were happy, they wanted to share it with him. One night, as Nolan was going up to bed, he found the three girls whispering in the hallway. When they saw him, they stopped talking and smiled. "Good night," he said. "Good night, Nolan," the twins replied. "Good night, Daddy," said June. He noticed how Lena and Lila looked at June when she said Daddy, as if testing the sound of the word in their own minds, but they weren't ready yet. And that was okay, because words can be empty, but gestures, care, and presence, those come from the heart. The bond grew without needing words. It was a warm Saturday afternoon when Nolan decided to take the three girls to the park. It had been almost a month since the twins had been living with them, and this would be one of the first long outings they would take together. The girls were excited, running around the house to grab hats and water bottles. "Oh, don't forget the sunscreen," June shouted, organizing a backpack with snacks. "Already got it in the bag," Nolan replied, checking if he had everything they needed. The park was a 15-minute drive from the house. It was a large place, with a playground, walking trails, and even a small lake where families used to have picnics. The girls could barely contain their excitement during the drive. "Are there swings there?" asked Lila. "There's everything," June replied. "Swings, a seesaw, a giant slide." "A giant slide!" Lena's eyes widened. "It's huge. You're gonna love it." When they arrived at the park, the three girls ran towards the playground. Nolan followed them with the backpack, smiling as he saw their joy. It was comforting to see how Lena and Lila had adapted, how they looked like normal kids playing on any given Saturday. "Daddy, come push our swings," June yelled from the other side of the park. Nolan waved and headed over, watching the twins who had already discovered the slide. They went up and down repeatedly, laughing loudly and creating a one-person line. "Look how I do it," shouted Lena, sliding down on her stomach. "I can do it too," replied Lila, imitating her sister. For an hour, they played without a rush. Nolan pushed swings, helped with difficult climbs on the playground, and even participated in a race to the water fountain. It was a perfect family day. "Can I buy an ice cream?" June asked, pointing to a cart that had stopped near the park. "Of course. Let's all go." The four of them headed to the ice cream cart. There was a small line, so they waited their turn, talking about which flavors to choose. June wanted chocolate, Lila wanted strawberry, and Lena couldn't decide between vanilla and lime. "You can pick both," Nolan suggested. "A two-flavor popsicle." "Really?" asked Lena, excited. "Of course." While they were waiting in line, Nolan noticed that Lena had stopped talking. She was staring intently at something behind him, her expression changing completely. The joy vanished from her face, replaced by a tension he hadn't seen in weeks. "Lena, what is it?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. Her whole body had stiffened, and she instinctively moved closer to Nolan. "It's him," she murmured, almost inaudibly. "Who?" Nolan turned to look in the direction she was watching. About 50 yards away, near a large tree, a man was watching the group. It was hard to see his features clearly from that distance, but Nolan could tell he was focused specifically on them. "It's our dad," whispered Lila, who had also noticed the man's presence. Nolan felt a chill in his stomach. June, who was distracted counting the money for the ice cream, hadn't noticed anything yet. "Are you sure?" Nolan asked the twins quietly. Both nodded, positioning themselves behind him, as they did in the early days when they felt threatened. The man watched for a few more seconds. Nolan tried to memorize his features: dark, scruffy hair, an unshaven beard, clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed recently. There was something unsettling about the way he stared, as if he were assessing the situation. Then, without any signal or movement towards them, the man simply turned and walked away, disappearing among the park's trees. "He's gone," said Lena, but her voice was still trembling. "Are you okay?" asked Nolan, crouching down to be at their level. "We're okay," replied Lila, but it was obvious both were shaken. June finally noticed that something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing important," Nolan said quickly. "How about we get those ice creams?" He tried to maintain normality, but he could feel that the twins were agitated for the rest of the outing. They stayed closer to him, less willing to wander off, and constantly looked around as if expecting to see the man again. The ride back home was quiet. June tried to cheer her sisters up by telling jokes, but it was clear the mood had changed. As soon as they got home, Nolan put the girls to watch a movie in the living room and called Margaret, the social worker. "Margaret, it's Nolan Wakefield. I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course." "What happened?" He told her about the encounter at the park, about how the girls recognized their biological father, about the strange way he watched them and then simply left. "This is concerning," said Margaret. "Let me check a few things, and I'll call you back." 2 hours later, the phone rang. "Nolan, I got some information on the girl's father. His name is Derek Morrison, and the history isn't good. There are records of theft, child abandonment, and multiple incidents related to alcohol use. He's had a few run-ins with the police in recent years." Nolan felt his stomach clench. "Is there an arrest warrant for him?" "Not at the moment, but he's on probation for a theft committed 6 months ago. Any new offense could result in imprisonment." "What does this mean for the girls?" "It means we need to be vigilant. Legally, he is still their biological father, even with the history of abandonment. I'll document today's sighting and inform the proper authorities. And if he tries something, if he approaches the house or tries to make direct contact, call the police immediately, and keep me informed of anything." After hanging up, Nolan sat on the sofa next to the girls. The movie was ending, but they seemed distracted. "Girls," he said softly, "and about what happened at the park?" "We know it was him," Lena said quietly. "Are you scared?" They looked at each other and nodded. "Is he going to try to take us away?" asked Lila. "I won't let that happen," Nolan said firmly. "You are safe here." June moved closer to the twins and hugged them. "We won't let anyone take you," she said with a child's determination. The next few days passed without incident, but Nolan could feel the tension in the air. The twins went back to being more alert, closer to him, as if the sighting at the park had awakened memories they were trying to forget. On Wednesday afternoon, Nolan was working from home when the doorbell rang. The girls were playing in the backyard, so he went to answer it alone. When he opened the door, he found the same man he had seen at the park. Up close, he could see his features better, blue eyes like the twins, but empty and tired. There was a strong smell of alcohol, even though it was the middle of the afternoon. "You must be the guy who's taking care of my daughters," the man said, his voice slurred. Nolan kept the door only partially open, his body blocking the entrance. "Can I help you with something?" "I'm Derek Morrison, Lena and Lila's father." "I see. What do you want?" Derek took a step forward, trying to look inside the house. "I want to see my daughters." "They don't want to see you," Nolan replied calmly. "It doesn't matter what they want. They're my daughters." Nolan felt his anger rising, but he forced himself to stay calm. Discreetly, he took his phone out of his pocket and started a recording. "You abandoned them," Nolan said. "You left 2 5-year-old children alone on the street." "That was temporary," Derek stammered. "I was going through a tough time. And now?" Derek looked around, as if searching for something. Then his eyes returned to Nolan with an expression he didn't like. "Look, you seem like a nice guy," Derek said, trying to force a smile. "And it's obvious you have money. What are you getting at? And you want to keep them? Then pay me." Nolan felt a mix of disgust and disbelief. The man was literally trying to sell his own daughters. "Are you trying to sell me your daughters?" Nolan asked, making sure the recording captured everything clearly. "It's not selling," Derek corrected himself quickly. "It's compensation for the costs I've had raising them so far." "You didn't raise anything. They were sleeping on the street when I found them." "That was temporary," Derek repeated. "But if you want to keep them permanently, you have to compensate me for the loss I'm going to have." Nolan looked at the man with repulsion. It was impossible to believe this was the father of the 2 sweet girls who were now part of his family. "And how much?" he asked, curious to see how far Derek would go. "5,000 for each, 10,000 total. And if I pay that, you disappear forever." "Exactly. You never see me again, and the girls stay with you." Nolan discreetly stopped the recording. He had more than enough material. "I'll think about your proposal," he said. "You can come back on Friday for an answer." Derek seemed pleased. "Great, Friday it is, and man, don't do anything stupid. They're my daughters. Legally speaking. He turned and walked away, stumbling unsteadily down the sidewalk. Nolan closed the door and immediately called Margaret. "Margaret, I need to speak with you urgently." He was here. "I'm on my way." While he waited, Nolan looked out the window to the backyard, where he could see the three girls playing with dolls under the tree. They seemed happy and carefree, unaware that their peace had been threatened again. 15 minutes later, Margaret arrived. Nolan played the recording for her, watching her expression grow more and more serious. "And this is attempted extortion," she said when she finished listening. "I'm sending this to the police immediately." "And the girls?" "For now, they stay with you, but we need to expedite the adoption process and also get a restraining order against him." Just then, the girls came in through the back door laughing about some game. They stopped when they saw Margaret. "Hi, Margaret," June said excitedly. "Hello, girls," Margaret replied, but Nolan could see she was watching the twins carefully. Lena and Lila approached shyly. It was then that Lila asked, "We smelled cigarette smoke in front of the house. Did someone come here?" Nolan cursed himself internally. Of course they had smelled it. Derek smoked, and the smell must have lingered at the entrance. "Someone did," he said, deciding to be honest. "It was your father." The effect was immediate. Both girls turned pale and instinctively moved closer to Nolan. "Is he going to take us away?" asked Lena, her voice small and frightened. "We want to stay here," Lila added, tears starting to form in her eyes. Nolan knelt and opened his arms. The two girls ran to him, clinging as if their lives depended on it. "You're not going anywhere," he said firmly, hugging them tightly. "Never again." "Promise?" asked Lila, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "I promise." "Margaret and I will make sure you stay here forever." June joined the hug, wrapping her small arms around her sisters. "We're a family," she said, "and families stick together." Margaret watched the scene with visible emotion in her eyes. It was clear where the girls belonged. "I'll file all the necessary paperwork today," she said. "And I will make sure Derek Morrison can never threaten this family again." Nolan continued to hug the girls, feeling them tremble slightly. The fear was back, but this time he knew exactly what to do. "Listen," he said, pulling back a little to look into their eyes. "I won't let anyone break up our family, ever. You are my daughters now, and I will protect you with everything I have." For the first time since they had come to his house, Lena looked directly into his eyes and said, "You are our real father." And Lila added, "The other one never was." Nolan felt tears in his own eyes. Finally, the words they couldn't say before had been spoken. Not because someone forced them, but because they finally understood the difference between who makes a child and who is truly a father. "And you are my real daughters," he replied, "forever." The day had come. After 2 months of paperwork, evaluations, and anticipation, the custody hearing was scheduled for this Thursday morning. Nolan woke up early, long before his alarm went off, with a mix of nervousness and hope rushing through his veins. Lena and Lila also woke up early. Ever since they learned about the hearing last week, they could barely sleep. They had spent the night whispering to each other, as they always did when they were anxious. "Good morning, girls," Nolan said, finding them both already sitting in the kitchen. "Good morning, Dad," they replied together. The word was still new on their lips, but it sounded more and more natural. Since the encounter with Derek, they had started calling him Dad more often, as if they had finally understood the difference between who creates a child and who truly cares for one. June came running down the stairs, already dressed in her best blue dress. "Today's the day," she announced, as if it were Christmas and her birthday all at once. "Sure, it's the day," Nolan confirmed, trying to hide his own nervousness. During breakfast, he explained again how the hearing would go. The girls already knew, but repeating it seemed to calm them. "We'll all go to the courthouse together," he said. "Margaret will be there and also some other professionals you already know." "And after?" asked Lila. "After, if all goes well, you will officially be my daughters." "And if it doesn't go well?" asked Lena, the worry clear in her voice. "It will go well," June said with conviction, "because we're a real family." An hour later, The four of them were in the car on their way to the courthouse. The girls wore their best dresses, June in blue, Lena in a light pink, and Lila in a soft yellow. Nolan had bought the dresses especially for this day, wanting them to feel special and beautiful. The courthouse was a large and intimidating building, with long hallways and a lot of people moving about. The twins stayed close to Nolan, one on each side, while June walked a little ahead, curious about everything around her. "This is it," said Margaret, who was waiting for them at the entrance to the hearing room. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," Lena admitted. "Anxious," Lila added. "That's normal," said Margaret with a reassuring smile. "So but you'll see it will be simpler than you imagine." They entered the room and sat in the front chairs. It was a formal setting, with the judge's bench elevated and several tables for lawyers and other involved parties. Gradually, other people arrived. The psychologist who had evaluated the girls, the educator who had monitored their adaptation, and the lawyer Nolan had hired to represent them. Where is Derek?" Nolan asked Margaret quietly. "We don't know if he'll show up," she replied. He was notified but didn't confirm his attendance. At 10 o'clock sharp, the judge entered the room. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a serious but not threatening expression. Everyone stood up respectfully. "Good morning. This is the hearing to determine the custody of the minors Lena Morrison and Lila Morrison. Please be seated." The judge began by calling Margaret to testify. She went to the stand and, clearly and objectively, explained how she had come to know the case, the conditions in which the girls were found, and how they had adapted to the Wakefield home. "In my professional assessment," Margaret concluded, "the girls have found a stable, loving, and suitable home for their needs. I strongly recommend granting permanent custody to Mr. Nolan Wakefield." Next, the psychologist, Dr. Sandra Hayes, who had conducted several sessions with the twins over the past 2 months, was called. "The girls arrived with clear signs of trauma and neglect, she explained. They exhibited behaviors typical of children who have suffered abandonment, hypervigilance, difficulty trusting, disturbed sleep patterns. And now, the judge asked, the transformation has been remarkable. They have developed healthy bonds, demonstrate emotional security, and show all the signs of children who are being properly cared for and loved." The educator, Mrs. Marina Costa, who had overseen the girls' preparation to enter school, also gave her testimony. Initially, Lena and Lila showed significant educational delays and socialization difficulties, she said. But with the support of the Wakefield family, they have made impressive progress. They are ready to enter regular school and fully integrate with other children. Nolan was called to testify next. He approached the stand with slightly trembling legs, but determined. "Mr. Wakefield," the judge said, "can you tell us how you met the girls?" Nolan told the whole story. The night at the restaurant, the encounter on the sidewalk, the decision to take them home. He spoke about how they adapted, how they became part of the family, how they changed his and June's lives for the better. "What is your motivation for seeking official custody?" the judge asked. "They are my daughters," Nolan replied simply. "In every way that matters, I want to give them the legal security they deserve. And I want the legal right to protect and care for them for the rest of their lives. And are you prepared for all the responsibilities that this entails?" "Completely. They have been my responsibility for 2 months now, and I can't imagine my life without them." Nolan's lawyer presented all the necessary documents, proof of income, the girls, medical records, school adaptation reports, and several letters of recommendation from neighbors and friends who knew the family. "I would like to speak with the girls," the judge said. Nolan returned to his seat, and Margaret escorted the 3 girls to a smaller table near the judge. They were visibly nervous but stood tall and dignified. "Hello, girls," the judge said in a softer voice than he had used before. "You don't need to be afraid. I just want to talk with you for a little bit." He first addressed June. "June, how do you feel about having Lena and Lila living with you?" "It's the best thing that's ever happened to our house," June replied without hesitation. "It used to be too quiet. Now we play together, we share everything, and they're my sisters." "Your sisters?" "Yes. It might not be on paper yet, but they're my real sisters." The judge smiled slightly and turned to the twins. And you, Lena and Lila? How do you feel living with Mr. Wakefield and June? Lena and Lila looked at each other, having their silent communication. Then Lena took a deep breath. This is our home, she said, her voice small but firm. Our real home, Lila added. And what's it like living there? It's nice, said Lena. No one yells, there's always food, and we get to play. And does Mr. Wakefield take good care of you? He's our dad, Lila said with conviction. But I'm not the one who made us, but the one who takes care of us. And do you want to stay with him? Forever, they answered together. The judge was asking a few more questions when the courtroom door opened. Derek Morrison stumbled in slightly, wearing wrinkled clothes and smelling strongly of alcohol that could be detected even from a distance. Sorry I'm late, he said too loudly. Traffic was terrible. The judge frowned. Mr. Morrison, I presume. That's right, Derek Morrison, the girl's father. Nolan felt his blood boil. The twins, who were starting to relax, immediately tensed up and moved closer to Margaret. Mr. Morrison, the judge said in a cold voice, are you under the influence of alcohol? No, sir. Maybe a little beer at lunch, but nothing major. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Derek looked confused for a moment. Oh, then it was at dinner last night. The judge called for a recess and summoned Margaret and Nolan's lawyer for a private conversation. After a few minutes, they returned. Mr. Morrison, Father Judge said, before we proceed, I need to verify some information. He signaled to the court officer, who approached with some papers. According to the records I have here, there is an outstanding warrant for your arrest for previous thefts. Is that true? Derek turned pale. That was a misunderstanding. It doesn't seem to be a misunderstanding, the judge said, examining the documents. There are records of at least 3 thefts in the last 6 months, in addition to a violation of your probation. I can explain. You don't need to explain here, the judge interrupted. Officer, please execute the warrant. What? No. I came here for my daughters. 2 police officers who had been summoned entered the room. Derek tried to resist, but he was clearly under the influence and couldn't put up much of a fight. This is absurd. They're my daughters. You can't do this. The twins watched the scene with a mixture of fear and relief. Lena held Lila's hand, both practically glued to Margaret. Won't take him away, the judge ordered, and ensure that the case against him is expedited. Derek was removed from the room, still protesting. The silence that followed was almost palpable. The judge waited a few minutes for things to calm down, then resumed the hearing. Girls, he said gently to Lena and Lila, are you all right? They nodded, but were still visibly shaken. You don't need to worry about him anymore, the judge said. He won't be bothering you again. He then addressed the court officer and those present. So based on all the testimonies presented, the professional evaluations, and considering the best interests of the minors involved, this court grants permanent custody of Lena Morrison and Lila Morrison to Mr. Nolan Wakefield. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Furthermore, the judge continued, I authorize the immediate start of the adoption process, which shall be finalized within 90 days. He banged the gavel. Custody granted. You now have a safe home. The twins ran to Nolan, who scooped them up and hugged them tightly. June joined the hug, jumping for joy. We did it, shouted June. Guys, we're a real family now. Margaret approached with tears in her eyes. Congratulations, she said. You've earned this. Thank you, Nolan said, his voice choked with emotion. Thank you for everything. As they were signing the final papers, Lena tugged on Nolan's shirt. Say, Dad. Yes, sweetie. Now no one can separate us. Never, he said, kissing the top of her head. Never again. And the bad man? He won't bother you anymore. The judge made sure of that. Lila approached too. Can we go home now? Let's go home, Nolan said, smiling. Our home. Leaving the courthouse, June held one of each twin's hands, skipping along the way. Now you're officially my sisters, she said. We have to have a party. A party? Asked Lena. Of course, a welcome to the family party. Nolan watched the 3 girls ahead of him, excitedly talking about plans for the party. 2 months ago, he was a single father with 1 daughter. Now he was the father of 3 incredible girls who had turned his house into a true home. In the car, on the way home, he looked in the rearview mirror and saw the 3 girls laughing together in the back seat. Lena and Lila were no longer the scared children he had found sleeping on the sidewalk. They were his daughters, safe and happy. "Where are we going now, Dad?" asked Lila. "Home," he replied. "We're going to our home." And for the first time, when he said, "our home," all 4 people in the car knew exactly what that meant. The ride back from the courthouse was filled with joy and relief. The 3 girls chatted excitedly in the back seat, planning how to celebrate this special day. June kept repeating that they were now an official family, while Lena and Lila were still processing the fact that they would never have to worry about being separated again. "Can we make a cake?" suggested Lila. "And decorate the house," added Lena. "Josh, we can do anything you want," Nolan said, looking in the rearview mirror. "This is the most important day of our lives." When they got home, June had an idea. "Dad, we need a sign." "A sign?" Nolan asked, opening the front door. "Yes, families. Houses always have a sign with the family name on the gate." Lena and Lila got excited about the idea. "Can it have our names too?" Lena asked shyly. "Of course it can," Nolan replied. "You're Wakefields now." The twins' eyes lit up. They were still getting used to the idea of having a real last name, an official identity that connected them forever to their new family. "Are we making the sign now?" June asked, already running to the closet where they kept craft supplies. "Now," Nolan agreed. June found a wooden board in the basement that Nolan had bought months ago. It was perfect, just the right size and with a smooth surface for painting. "First, we have to sand it," Nolan explained, teaching the girls how to prepare the wood. The 3 took turns with the sandpaper, laughing when the wood dust stuck to their hair. Lila sneezed 3 times in a row, making the others laugh even harder. "Now let's paint the background," said June, who had become the project's art director. They chose a light blue for the background color. The girls painted with small brushes, taking care not to leave marks or drips. Lena proved to be particularly skilled, making smooth, even strokes. "You're good at this," Nolan observed. "Mom taught us how to paint," Lena said softly. "She used to say we had the hands of an artist." "She was right," Nolan said, affectionately touching Lena's shoulder. While the paint was drying, they planned what to write on the sign. "The Wakefield family," said June. "That's obvious. But we need something more," said Lila. "Something special." Nolan thought for a moment. "How about the Wakefield family, where love lives?" The 3 girls looked at each other and smiled. "Perfect," said Lila. "That's exactly it," Lena added. When the background paint was dry, they started writing the letters. June made the letters for family. Lena wrote Wakefield, and Lila took care of where love lives. Each used a different color. June chose red, Lena chose purple, and Lila chose green. "It's colorful," Lila observed, admiring the result. "Just like our family," said June. "Each one is different, but together it's beautiful." By the time the sign was ready, it was getting dark. Nolan got his toolbox and, with the 3 girls watching intently, he nailed the sign to the front gate of the house. "There," he said, stepping back to admire the result. The sign looked perfect on the black iron gate. The colorful letters stood out against the blue background, and the words seemed to make official something that had existed for a long time. "Now everyone who passes by will know that this is the home of the Wakefield family," June said proudly. "And that love lives here," Lena added. "Our house has a name now," Lila murmured, as if talking to herself. Nolan looked at the sign and felt a deep emotion. The home, at last, had a name and an identity. During dinner, they continued to plan ways to celebrate. June suggested they take pictures to document the day. "We need a family photo, an official photo," she said. "Good idea," said Nolan. "Where do you want to take it?" "In the garden," said Lila. "It's near the flowers we planted." They went out to the backyard, where there was a flower bed the girls had helped plant in the previous weeks. The flowers were starting to bloom, creating a colorful and cheerful background. Nolan set his phone to timer mode and positioned it on a garden chair. "Everyone together," he said, positioning himself behind the girls. June stood in the middle, with Lena on one side and Lila on the other. Nolan stood behind them, with his hands on Lena's and Lila's shoulders. "Smile," said the automated voice from the phone. The photo captured a perfect moment. 4 genuinely happy people, surrounded by flowers, bathed in the soft light of the late afternoon. It was the first official photo of the Wakefield family. "It's beautiful," exclaimed June, looking at the result. "We look like a real family," said Lena. "We are a real family," Nolan corrected. "Can we print it and make a picture frame?" asked Lila. "Of course." The next day, Saturday, they went to the craft and print shop. The girls chose special paper for the photo and bought colored cardstock, buttons, glitter, and glue to make a special picture frame. Back at home, they spread out on the living room table with all the materials. "The frame can be pink and blue," June suggested. "And we can glue buttons around it," said Lena. "And write something special underneath," Lila added. They worked with concentration for 2 hours. June cut the cardstock to the right measurements. Lena glued colorful buttons around the photo, forming a delicate and fun frame. Lila chose sticker letters to write underneath the photo. "What are we going to write?" asked Lila. "The Wakefield family," June suggested. "No," said Lena thoughtfully. "It has to be something more special." "Family of the heart," Lila said suddenly. The other two stopped and looked at her. "Family of the heart," June repeated. "I like it." "It's perfect," Lena agreed. With colorful letters, each word in a different color, they wrote "Family of the Heart" under the photo. The result was cheerful, colorful, and completely unique. "Where are we going to put it?" asked June. "On the living room shelf," said Nolan, "where everyone can see it." He took the handmade picture frame and carefully placed it on the central shelf in the living room, right in the middle, where it was visible from any angle. "There we go," he said, stepping back to admire it. "Our home is complete." The girls settled on the sofa to admire their work. The photo looked perfect on the shelf, with the vibrant colors of the frame contrasting with the books around it. "We did that," Lena said with pride. "Together," Lila added. "Like a family," said June. The afternoon was warm, and after all the artistic activity, the girls started to get sleepy. One by one, they settled down on the large living room sofa. June was the first, curling up on one end with a pillow. Lena lay down next to her, and Lila snuggled up next to Lena. In a few minutes, the 3 of them were peacefully napping. Nolan watched them for a few moments, then went to the shelf to look at the photo more closely. There they were, the Wakefield family, captured in a moment of pure happiness. He thought about how his life had changed in just a few months. Before, the house was too big, too quiet, too organized. Now it was full of life, noise, mess, and love. Nolan sat down carefully on the sofa next to the sleeping girls. June murmured something unintelligible and snuggled closer to him. Lena adjusted her position, resting her head on his shoulder. Lila moved slightly, but continued to sleep. He looked around the room. The sign on the gate outside announced to the world that the Wakefield family lived there. The photo on the shelf documented their happiness. The drawings on the fridge showed the girls' creativity. Everything was in its place. It wasn't just a house where some people lived together. It was a home where a family had chosen to form, grow, and love. Nolan closed his eyes and allowed himself to relax completely for the first time in months. There were no more pending legal procedures, no more fear of separation, no more uncertainty about the future. There was just the 4 of them, in their house, being a family. The girls continued to sleep peacefully beside him. Outside, the sign on the gate swayed gently in the afternoon breeze, its colorful letters shining in the sun. The Wakefield family, where love lives. And it truly did. In every corner of the house, in every gesture of care, in every shared moment,